How does a man become a hero of his people? It is a question every warrior has asked himself since the birth of the first Mapuche. And I am one of few who have learned the answer. An answer I now impart to you. When these aching hands still grip the spear, when no clouded eyes hindered me from aiming the musket, I had the fortune of fighting alongside the greatest warrior our people have ever known. Lautaro, the Swift Hawk. One day, many years ago, evil spirits from a faraway land grew jealous and invaded our beautiful homeland of Araucania. I refer to them as spirits because, although the Spanish are humans of flesh and blood like us, their four-legged beasts and thunderous weapons made them seem like wrathful gods. The leader of these foreign men was Pedro de Valdivia. Valdivia proudly claimed that he and Pizarro had seized a great deal of gold from the Inca, our rivals beyond the Great Mountains. Now, he had come to our lands seeking more, with his new Inca subjects in tow. Many tribes abandoned all bravery and submitted to Valdivia in hopes of peace. However, no matter how much land and gold he acquired, his insatiable greed could never be appeased. Every village that resisted him was burned to the ground, its people slaughtered like animals. Yet, a few remained defiant, including the village of Lautaro's father. The Spanish showed no mercy. Valdivia ordered everyone in the village to be put to the blade. Lautaro, who was just a boy at the time, watched as his parents were killed in front of him. When his father let out a scream, Lautaro heard himself screaming too. In a blind fury, he picked up a broken lance and hurled it straight at Valdivia's heart. The Spaniard barely felt the impact through his armor, yet the boy had caught his attention. Perhaps he could mold this spirited barbarian into a Spanish soldier. That day, Valdivia welcomed Lautaro as his newest personal servant. Every fiber of Lautaro's being wanted to resist and scream, but he could do nothing. Nothing except swear bitter revenge. The spirit of Mapuche resistance shattered and died that day, except for a tiny sliver lodged in the heart of this angry young boy. Growing up under his master's watchful eye, Lautaro served Valdivia as he conquered the Mapuche homeland for his personal gain and the glory of Spain. To Lautaro, it was a fate worse than death. His only solace came during the brief moments he spent on horseback, riding alone across the hills. In those moments, he could almost fool himself into feeling free, almost feel the gentle touch of the sunrise on his face, just as it had felt when he woke up in his parents' house so many years ago. Yet, every time, those colorful memories quickly faded away, falling back into the gray depths of his soul, where only one thought kept him alive: his dream of exacting revenge on his captor. He learned to survive alongside the Spaniard by never asking questions and only responding with "Sí, Don Valdivia." He managed to avoid punishment. Over the years, Valdivia mistook his compliance for a broken and loyal spirit. The conquistador trained him in horseback riding, the use of Spanish weapons and battlefield tactics. He intended for Lautaro to lead his native forces into battle, believing that a Mapuche boy wielding Spanish guns would terrify the locals. Lautaro, however, had different plans. He impressed Valdivia with his swift mastery of even the most challenging tasks. Yet, his only goal was to eventually use this knowledge against his master. After years of campaigning with the Spanish, he realized that they were no demigods. They bled. They died. They could be defeated. As Lautaro came of age, Valdivia gave him command of his native troops. It was the ultimate test of his loyalty. The High War Chief welcomed Lautaro with open arms. As the sun illuminated the lush valley, and the Puan trees swayed in a gentle breeze, it was as though the land and Lautaro breathed a single sigh of relief. He was home. Much like Valdivia, Caupolicán had found a potential figurehead in the young warrior. But unlike the Spaniard, he saw Lautaro not as a mere tool, but as an equal. While some whispered that Lautaro might be a Spanish spy, it took Caupolicán just a single glance to recognize the honesty in his eyes. He staked his reputation on the young man, making him his second-in-command after just a few weeks. Most Mapuche warriors quickly fell in line. After all, who were they to question Caupolicán, the man who, according to the stories, had the strength to hold up a tree trunk for a whole day and night? Together, Lautaro and Caupolicán set out to shape their disorganized warriors into an army capable of rivaling the Spanish. Organizing the men proved a difficult task. Many still suspected Lautaro of being a Spanish spy, and even those who trusted him were accustomed to fighting as solitary warriors rather than as parts of a unified force. To instill discipline and earn the trust of the skeptics, Caupolicán paired Lautaro with his greatest warrior. Galvarino was a fearless beast, equally quick to laughter as he was to anger. Despite losing both hands to the Spanish, he refused to be hindered by such a trivial inconvenience. Instead, he attached knives to his arms and continued to fight. "I can be your right knife man, Lautaro. I doubt the Spanish ever made you such a tempting offer." Lautaro laughed. "They never even offered me a single knife." Together, they drilled the warriors into organized units. One day, while distributing the stolen guns among his men, Lautaro noticed a young boy playing with a stick. He stared at him, remembering the young boy whose only hope had been a broken lance. Avenging his parents had been his lifelong goal. Yet now, with the help of Caupolicán, Galvarino, and their burgeoning army, he could achieve so much more. He could ensure that no child would ever grow up without their father and mother again. But first, he had to unite the Mapuche. The decisive victory at Tucapel filled the Mapuche with renewed hope. They had learned to ride horses, use firearms, and coordinate their efforts on the battlefield. The warriors, who had once relied solely on their bravery, had transformed into a formidable army capable of outmaneuvering their foes. Lautaro's success echoed across Araucanía. Until now, Caupolicán had been the unwavering protector of his people, resisting the Spanish at every turn. However, when he saw the confidence Lautaro instilled in the warriors, he realized that his time had come. To everyone's surprise, he announced his decision to step down as High Chieftain. In his stead, he nominated a stunned Lautaro, a choice which was met with overwhelming cheers. When Lautaro approached to question him, Caupolicán said, "The spirits have been telling me this for a while now. You are our future." The Battle of Tucapel had been a significant triumph, but with Valdivia still evading justice, the war was far from over. The Spaniard was likely to remain near the safety of his many forts. If Lautaro could find the one where Valdivia was hiding, he could flush him out like a rabbit. "We should give Valdivia a warm welcome when he tries to flee," Galvarino said as Lautaro laid out the plan. "What do you think he'll enjoy more? My knives or his own guns?" However, cracks were starting to show in the facade of the Mapuche Confederation. Emboldened by their victory at Tucapel, the tribes began to bicker over old rivalries. Lautaro knew he had to act swiftly to maintain the alliance. Was there such a thing as pain beyond pain? The charred remains of the fort were littered with the bodies of Mapuche warriors. Young men who had fought, bled, and died at Lautaro's command. Hundreds, thousands of lives gone in an instant. And for what? Pedro de Valdivia was still at large. The Mapuche alliance was crumbling. Their sacrifices had been in vain. Spanish swords and muskets had killed them, but it was he who had sent them to their deaths. He had failed them, just like he had failed his parents. As Galvarino approached him after the battle, Lautaro wished his friend would stay away. However, he swallowed his emotions and listened to the report. "Our scouts say that Valdivia is building up his army at Santiago. We are running out of time." Lautaro struggled to breathe. "We are running out of men, too." As the pain of his loss subsided, Lautaro realized that the shard of defiance embedded in his heart since the death of his parents remained intact. Despite losing so many men and seeing his allies waver, he stood resolute. He had not surrendered when Valdivia forced him into servitude, and he would not give up now. Caupolicán and Galvarino remained steadfast in their loyalty. With their combined forces, Lautaro still had the strength for one final assault. If they could take Santiago, Valdivia would have nowhere left to run. The Spanish would be crushed once and for all. As Lautaro assembled his army for the final march, he raised his spear and spoke to them in a voice that shook their very hearts. "Brave men, I have heard your grumblings of surrender and peace. But what will peace bring us? Nothing but disgrace. You can either live in peace as Spanish slaves, or die with me as free men, protecting your land and your children. The only road to lasting peace, to freedom, is the road to Santiago!" The crowd raised their weapons in unison and shouted, "To Santiago!" As their swords clashed on the battlefield, it felt as though time had stopped. Lautaro could hear the blood rushing through his ears. Again and again, He swung his blade at Valdivia, the steel ringing out in a triumphant melody. He could see the fear in the Spaniard's eyes, and he relished every second of it. This is what he had lived for. He would avenge his parents, and no Mapuche child would ever grow up as an orphan again. When Valdivia's sword pierced his abdomen, Lautaro seized up. Yet his mind was so flooded with rage that he felt no pain. With a final swing, his sword struck true. The Spaniard's black eyes widened in shock. Before he could speak, he fell to the ground, his greedy spirit leaving his body. The hatred that had fueled Lautaro for so long seemed to evaporate. It was done. His life's mission was complete. Old memories flooded his mind, glimpses of a forgotten life. A young boy racing with friends, eating his mother's tortillas, swimming in the river on a hot day. As the momentary peace faded, Lautaro collapsed to the ground, overwhelmed by agony. Yet, as the blinding pain began to fade and his senses dimmed in his final moments, he knew he had succeeded. Lautaro died from his wounds that day, his oath to his parents and his people fulfilled. The Spanish fled our lands, and Caupolicán resumed his role as High Chief, with Galvarino as his second-in-command. The Mapuche had achieved a once unimaginable victory. If the Spanish dared to challenge them again, they would be ready to fight together as one. Yet, even though the man is gone, the memory of Lautaro lives on. Until the last Mapuche takes their final step in Araucanía, he will be remembered as the greatest hero our people have ever known. Let his example guide you in your struggle, young Konas. A hero fights where an ordinary man gives up. But above all, we must stand united, for even a hero cannot win alone.